Something is alive in the deep Southern Ocean right now. It weighs as much as a small car. Its eyes are wider than a basketball, and we filmed it alive for the first time in all of human history, just last year. The colossal squid. It has hooks that spin 360 degrees, a shell made of something that feels like plastic, and arms designed to never let go. Science has known this animal existed for 100 years, and still cannot answer basic questions about it. If you enjoy this, subscribe. This one goes deep. Prepare yourselves. We begin. Something lives in the Southern Ocean that science still cannot fully explain. It weighs as much as a small Italian car. Its body stretches longer than a school bus. It hunts in total darkness half a mile below the surface, in water so cold it would kill a human in minutes. And for most of human history, we had no idea it existed. The colossal squid. Even the name sounds like something a kid made up. But this animal is confirmed real, confirmed enormous, and confirmed to be one of the strangest creatures biology has ever had to deal with. Here is what makes it strange right away. Most animals this heavy have skeletons. Bones give structure. They hold the body together under pressure, keep organs in place, let muscles pull against something solid. A 1,000-pound land animal without a skeleton would collapse under its own weight in seconds. The colossal squid has no bones, zero. Its body is almost entirely soft tissue, muscle, organs, fluid, and yet it holds together perfectly at depths where the pressure would crush a car door. That already breaks a rule. Hold on to that thought, because the rule breaking gets worse. The squid belongs to a group of animals called cephalopods. That group includes octopuses and regular squid. You have probably seen a squid at a fish market. Maybe 10 inches long, rubbery, kind of boring. Now scale that up by a factor of 30. Keep scaling, keep going. The colossal squid is to a regular squid what a blue whale is to a dolphin. Scientists first confirmed this animal existed in 1925. A team examining the stomach contents of a sperm whale found 2 partial tentacles unlike anything recorded before. The hooks on those tentacles were rotating, spinning. The scientists had never seen that in any other animal. They named the species, wrote it down, and then the trail went cold for decades. No full body, no live sighting, just 2 tentacles inside a dead whale. For years, the colossal squid existed mostly as a mystery wrapped inside a legend. Sailors had told stories for centuries about massive creatures in the deep south, tentacles the size of tree trunks, eyes like dinner plates. Science had always filed those stories under probably exaggerated. Then the tentacles showed up in the whale, and slowly over the following decades, more pieces arrived. A mantle here, a beak fragment there. Each piece confirmed the same thing. This animal was genuinely enormous, genuinely strange, and genuinely unlike anything else alive on Earth. The first fully intact specimen science got to study in real detail did not arrive until 2003. A fishing vessel working the deep southern waters hauled one up by accident. The researchers who examined it described the anatomy as puzzling at almost every level. The body structure raised questions that standard biology did not have clean answers for. That should alarm you. Scientists can explain how almost every large animal works. The mechanics of a whale, an elephant, a giant octopus, all understood. The colossal squid kept producing features that made researchers stop and say, "We are not sure why this works the way it does." And here is the part that sets up everything else in this story. Every single part of the colossal squid's body, from its skin to its shell to its eyes to its hooks, seems designed for a life science cannot fully observe. It lives too deep, moves too rarely, and dies too far from shore for us to watch it in action. We are working with fragments, evidence collected across 100 years of dead specimens and accidents, and what those fragments reveal is stranger than anyone expected. The squid's body starts with its outer shell, a structure so unusual that the moment scientists found it, they had to reconsider what a soft-bodied animal could actually do. In 1925, a marine biologist named Guy Robson sat down at a table in London and opened a jar. Inside that jar were two tentacles. They had been pulled from the stomach of a sperm whale caught in the Antarctic. The whalers who found them had no idea what they were looking at. The tentacles were thick, muscular, and covered in hooks that no one had catalogued before. The whalers packed them in preservation fluid and sent them along. Robson had spent years studying cephalopods, squid, octopus, cuttlefish. He knew the anatomy well. He looked at these tentacles and understood immediately that he was holding something new. The hooks rotated. That was the first alarm. Standard squid anatomy uses suckers, small circular cups that grip through suction. Some species have small fixed spines inside those suckers. Rotating hooks on a ball joint was something else entirely, something that implied a body built for a very different kind of fight. Robson measured the tentacles, documented the hooks, and formally named the species, Mesonychoteuthis hamiltoni. He estimated the full animal could reach enormous size based on the proportions of what he had. Then he closed his notes and waited. No other specimen arrived. For the next several decades, the colossal squid existed in the scientific record as a name attached to two partial tentacles. Other researchers occasionally found fragments, a beak inside another whale, a small piece of mantle washed onto a beach. Each fragment confirmed the species was real, but told almost nothing about the living animal. Sperm whales kept giving clues. The whales are the colossal squid's main predator, confirmed. And when researchers examined whales' stomachs and skin, they found evidence of serious fights. Circular scars on whale faces, marks left by hooks embedding into flesh during a struggle. The whales were winning those fights, but the evidence suggested the squid was fighting back hard enough to leave permanent damage. That raised an obvious question. If sperm whales were hunting colossal squid regularly, the squid population had to be substantial. These were not rare chance encounters. Whales were finding them, fighting them, eating them, which meant the deep southern waters held a population of animals that science had almost no data on. Decades passed. Fragments kept arriving. In 1981, researchers found a nearly complete specimen tangled in a net at around 3,000 feet. It was smaller than Robson had estimated, but the anatomy matched. The rotating hooks were there, the massive mantle, the eyes far larger than any known cephalopod. Scientists started building a clearer picture of what this animal was, but the picture had enormous gaps. Nobody had seen one hunt. Nobody had observed how it moved at depth. Nobody had documented reproduction, growth rate, or lifespan. Then came 2003. A longline fishing vessel working the Ross Sea in Antarctica pulled up a full-grown female tangled in its gear. The crew called researchers immediately. The specimen arrived largely intact, which had almost never happened before. Scientists spent years examining that single animal. What they found confirmed some guesses and destroyed others. The anatomy was stranger in person than it had looked on paper. The internal shell felt like a strip of rigid plastic. The eye was larger than anyone had published. The hook mechanism on the tentacles was more complex than the 1925 description had captured, and still the animal had never been seen alive. That did not change until 2025. A deep-sea research vessel lowered a camera to nearly 2,000 feet in the Southern Ocean. The footage showed a juvenile colossal squid drifting in the dark. Transparent, ghost-like, moving in a way no model had predicted. 100 years after Robson opened that jar in London, science finally watched this animal breathe. Everything between 1925 and 2025 was detective work, and some of the clues pointed to anatomy that made researchers deeply uncomfortable. The body structure was the first problem. Pick up a water balloon. Now imagine that water balloon weighs 1,100 pounds and holds itself rigid at crushing ocean depth, in freezing cold water, while hunting fast-moving fish. your water balloon logic breaks immediately. A soft tissue body at that mass should deform, collapse, or tear itself apart under its own weight. The colossal squid does none of those things. Confirmed. To understand why this is strange, you need to understand what weight does to soft tissue. Muscle and organ tissue have no inherent structural support. They rely on either a skeleton, like bones in mammals, or a hydrostatic system, where fluid pressure inside the body keeps everything in shape. A hydrostatic system works well at small scales. Worms use it. Small, soft creatures use it. The system works because the volume of fluid is small enough to manage. At 1,100 pounds, the math changes fast. The pressure required to keep that volume of soft tissue structurally stable would be enormous. The muscle walls holding the fluid in would need to be incredibly thick. Thick muscle walls mean more weight. More weight means more pressure required. The system starts fighting itself. Large, soft-bodied animals in this category should hit a biological ceiling well below the colossal squid's recorded mass. Yet the squid exists. Confirmed, weighed, measured. Part of the answer is water. The colossal squid lives in an environment that supports its weight from the outside. Ocean water pushes inward from every direction, which means the body does not have to resist gravity the way a land animal does. A 1,000-pound land animal is constantly fighting to stay upright. A 1,000-pound ocean animal is carried by the water around it. That helps. It does not fully explain everything. The squid also carries a special fluid in its tissues that lowers its overall density. This fluid contains ammonium chloride, a compound lighter than seawater. Pumping that into muscle tissue makes the whole animal slightly buoyant, so it can hover in the water without constantly swimming. Other deep-sea squid use this trick. The colossal squid uses it at a scale that no other cephalopod approaches. But here is where it gets genuinely strange. The ammonium chloride strategy has a cost. That compound tastes terrible. It makes the flesh bitter and unpleasant, which is part of why humans do not eat colossal squid commercially. The squid essentially sacrifices being edible in exchange for being able to float. That is a confirmed trade-off built into the body chemistry of the largest invertebrate on Earth, and the mass itself still pushes limits. Researchers who examined the 2003 specimen noted that the muscle tissue in the mantle wall was unusually dense, far thicker than proportionally expected. The squid was not just using buoyancy, it had built structural reinforcement directly into its body wall in a way that other squid do not. Why that specific solution evolved is still a theory. The deep ocean applies enormous pressure from the outside, which may actually help compress and stabilize the tissue rather than tearing it apart. The squid may be using the ocean itself as a structural support, the way a submarine hull uses water pressure to stay rigid. The body holds together. The mechanism is partially understood, but the scale at which this animal pulled it off remains without a clear parallel in any other soft-bodied creature alive today. And inside that massive, improbable body, something even stranger hides. Something rigid. Something that looks and feels like plastic. Reach inside a colossal squid, and you find something that should not be there. A long, flat, rigid structure running the full length of the mantle. It is semi-transparent. It is stiff. It holds its shape when you pull it out. If you set it on a table, it looks and feels exactly like a piece of heavy-duty plastic sheeting. Scientists call it the gladius, and its presence inside an animal with no external shell raises an immediate question. What is a rigid internal structure doing inside a creature that moves by squeezing its entire body? The gladius is made of chitin, that is the same material in insect exoskeletons and crab shells. Hard, lightweight, and tough. In insects and crabs, chitin forms the outside of the body. It is the armor. In the colossal squid, chitin forms a flat internal spine, completely hidden inside the soft mantle. Think of it like this. The gladius is a support beam embedded in a building's wall. You cannot see it from the outside. You would not know it was there. without cutting the wall open. But without it, the whole structure loses rigidity and starts to sag. That is what the gladius does for the squid. Without it, the mantle, a body cavity nearly 9 feet long, would buckle and fold under pressure. The gladius keeps the mantle tube straight, giving the muscles something to pull against when the squid contracts to move. Here is the part that makes researchers pause. The gladius is wide, flat, and runs the full length of the animal. In evolutionary terms, it is the remnant of an ancient external shell. The ancestors of modern squid had full shells, like a nautilus. Over millions of years, that external shell moved inward and shrank down into a flat internal plate. The squid traded external armor for flexibility and speed. The colossal squid kept a gladius large enough to be structurally significant. That is unusual, even among squid. Most smaller species have a thin, fragile gladius that provides minimal support. The colossal squid's version is proportionally massive, thick, and load-bearing in a way that smaller relatives never needed. What that tells scientists is interesting. The squid's body evolved to handle mechanical stress at a scale that required real structural reinforcement. The gladius is not a vestigial leftover, a useless remnant from an older body plan. It is actively functional. The animal needs it. And the gladius interacts with the rest of the body in a specific way. The mantle muscles attach along its length and use it as a lever. When the squid contracts, those muscles pull against the gladius to generate force. The harder the contraction, the more load goes onto that internal plate. At 1,100 pounds of body mass, those forces get large fast. Researchers still debate exactly how much mechanical load the gladius absorbs during fast movement. The squid can jet backward at speed, which requires a violent, full-body contraction. The gladius takes the mechanical shock of that movement every single time. How it avoids cracking or deforming under repeated stress is a question that chitin biology has not fully answered at this scale. The gladius holds, the body holds. The squid moves, but the body that does the moving is unlike anything else in the ocean. The mantle is the main body of the squid. Everything vital lives inside it. Heart, stomach, gills, reproductive organs, all of it packed into a single muscular tube. The mantle of a fully grown colossal squid measures about 8 feet long and nearly 3 feet wide at its broadest point. Picture the bed of a full-size pickup truck. That is roughly the volume you are working with. Now imagine that truck bed is made entirely of muscle and can squeeze itself down to half its size in under a second. That is how the mantle works. It expands, pulling water inside through an opening at one end. Then it contracts, forcing that water out at speed. The entire body compresses like a fist closing. The force produced is what drives the animal forward or backward through the water. This is the core mechanical system that lets the colossal squid move at all, and it creates an immediate engineering problem. A body cavity 8 feet long needs to maintain a consistent seal during contraction, or the pressure leaks and the thrust drops. Smaller squid manage this easily because the distances involved are short. At 8 feet, the seal has to hold across a much larger surface area with much greater internal pressure. The mantle wall compensates by being unusually thick. Researchers who examined the 2003 specimen described the muscle wall as remarkably dense compared to smaller relatives. The tissue had to be strong enough to generate contraction force and stiff enough to hold its shape under the pressure of that contraction simultaneously. Here is what makes this more complicated. The mantle also has to flex. A rigid tube cannot contract. The muscle fibers in the mantle run in 2 directions: circular fibers that squeeze the tube closed, and lengthwise fibers that control the shape during contraction. The 2 systems work together to produce a smooth, controlled squeeze rather than a chaotic collapse. Getting that coordination right across 8 feet of muscle tissue requires a nervous system capable of sending signals along that entire length quickly and accurately. The colossal squid's nervous system is large for a cephalopod, though still far less complex than a vertebrate brain. How it manages full body coordination at this scale is still being studied. The mantle also does a second job that gets less attention. It regulates the squid's buoyancy. The ammonium chloride fluid mentioned earlier distributes through the mantle tissue. When the squid needs to adjust its depth, it adjusts how much of that fluid is active in the tissue. The mantle essentially acts as a buoyancy chamber, a ballast system, wrapped around every other organ. Running two separate functions simultaneously, propulsion and buoyancy, through the same tissue wall is an unusual design. Most animals separate these systems. The squid integrated them into one structure. Outside the mantle, two large paired fins extend from the rear end of the body. These fins are nearly 4 feet long in a fully grown adult and look like wide flat wings attached to the back of the body tube. They handle fine-tuned movement and directional steering, while the mantle handles raw propulsion. The combination of fins and mantle contraction gives the squid two completely different movement modes, slow and precise, or fast and explosive. Both modes feed through a single structure that does something no other part of the body does: one hole, one tube, and through it, the squid breathes, moves, and cleans itself all at once. Under the squid's head sits a muscular tube called the funnel. You would not notice it immediately. It is compact, tucked tight against the body pointing downward. But every major life-sustaining process the squid has runs through this one opening. Breathing happens through it. Movement happens through it. Waste exits through it. For a body this large, routing that many systems through a single point is a bold design choice. Here is how the breathing side works. The squid pulls water into the mantle cavity through an opening around the funnel. Inside the mantle, two gills extract oxygen from that water. The gills are large, matching the scale of the rest of the animal. Once the water has been processed, the mantle contracts and forces the water back out through the funnel. That same outward push of water is the jet propulsion event. The contraction that expels spent water is the same contraction that launches the squid backward. Breathing and movement are the same mechanical action. That is efficient, dangerously efficient actually. It means the squid cannot separate breathing from movement. If the mantle muscles stop working, both systems fail at once. The animal cannot breathe while sitting perfectly still the way a fish can hold position and still run water over its gills. Every breath requires some level of muscular effort. At 1,100 pounds, that is a significant ongoing energy cost. Waste removal adds another layer. The digestive system ends at the funnel. Solid and liquid waste exits through the same tube the squid breathes through. The body manages the timing so these processes do not conflict, but the plumbing is shared. The ink system plugs into this same tube. When threatened, the squid releases ink from a gland inside the mantle. The ink enters the funnel flow and launches outward in a cloud. The ink from a colossal squid is dark and thick. It creates a visual block in the water, giving the squid a moment to jet away while the predator loses sight of it. Researchers confirmed ink glands in dissected specimens. Whether adult colossal squid use ink against sperm whales is still listed as unknown. A sperm whale does not rely on vision the way most predators do. It hunts by echolocation, sending sound pulses through the water and reading the echo. Ink clouds would do nothing against that system. So the ink may function exclusively against other predators, or it may be a juvenile defense that becomes less useful as the animal grows. The data is incomplete. The funnel itself is muscular and flexible. The squid can aim it in different directions, which gives some steering control to the jet propulsion. Pointing the funnel to the left sends the jet right and pushes the animal left. The squid steers by redirecting the exhaust of its own breathing. That steering system is fast and precise at smaller scales. At full adult size, the inertia of the body makes sharp turns harder to execute. The colossal squid is probably better at rapid acceleration in a straight line than at tight maneuvering, which fits with how it likely hunts. It waits. Something comes close. One explosive burst, That burst starts with a structure that surprises almost everyone who learns about it. The squid does not swim the way a fish does. A fish moves by bending its spine and pushing water sideways with its tail. The motion is continuous, rhythmic, and visible. You can watch a fish swim and understand exactly how it works. The colossal squid moves like a cannon reloading itself over and over. The mantle expands. Water floods in. The mantle slams shut. Water fires out through the funnel. The squid rockets backward. Then the cycle repeats. Each pulse of propulsion is a separate explosive event. The animal builds pressure, releases it, builds again. At full adult size, a single strong contraction moves over a gallon of water through the funnel in a fraction of a second. The thrust produced is significant. Physics connects directly here. The force driving the squid backward equals the mass of water expelled times its exit velocity. Push more water out faster, and the squid accelerates harder. The wide funnel and the massive mantle give the squid the ability to move a large volume of water at once, which produces enough force to shift over half a ton of body mass suddenly. Here is what makes this system impressive at depth. Water pressure increases as you go deeper. At 600 feet down, the pressure outside the body is roughly 20 times what you feel on the surface. At the depths adult colossal squid inhabit, the pressure climbs much higher. That external pressure pushes inward on the mantle from every direction. The squid has to contract its mantle against that incoming external pressure to expand and pull water in. Every breath and every movement requires the muscles to work against the crushing weight of the ocean around them. Smaller squid deal with this by not going very deep. The colossal squid does it by having mantle muscles dense enough to overpower the external pressure, even at significant depth. The muscle tissue in the mantle wall is substantially thicker than what you find in shallow water relatives of comparable length. This has an interesting side effect. The same muscle density that lets the squid breathe at depth gives its jet an unusual amount of raw force at any depth. A full body contraction from an animal this size produces a thrust event that researchers estimate could launch the squid several body lengths in a very short time. Imagine something the size and weight of a full-grown male lion moving at that acceleration underwater. That is the scale of force the jet produces. The system has limits though. Jet propulsion is metabolically expensive. Each contraction requires energy. Sustaining high-speed jetting for long periods would burn through energy reserves fast. The squid almost certainly uses short bursts for hunting and escape rather than continuous high-speed travel. The paired tail fins handle the rest. When the squid needs to hold position, make small adjustments, or move slowly without burning energy on full jet pulses, the fins take over. They undulate in a wave pattern, giving the animal fine control that the jet cannot provide. Together, the fins and the jet give the colossal squid a two-speed system, efficient and quiet when it does not need speed, explosive and fast when it does. The quiet mode hides the squid. The fast mode ends encounters quickly. But to understand what the squid is hiding from, and what it is trying to catch, you need to look at the fins themselves, because their size tells you something about how this animal lives that no other feature does, quite as clearly. The fins at the rear of the colossal squid's body span nearly 4 feet across. In a fully grown adult, 4 feet. That is wider than most people's arm span, and these fins are attached to a body tube 8 feet long, which means they take up roughly half the total body length as a fin structure. That ratio is unusually high. Most cephalopods, the group of animals the squid belongs to, have small fins relative to their body. The fins are useful for stabilization and mime steering but do not contribute much to actual movement. The mantle jet does the heavy lifting. The colossal squid's fins are proportionally much larger than that pattern suggests, and larger fins mean something specific in fluid dynamics. They generate more lift and drag per movement cycle, which makes them better at precise low-speed control rather than raw thrust. The fins are steering and hovering tools, scaled up to match a 1,000-pound body. Here is why that matters for how this animal lives. The colossal squid probably spends most of its time moving slowly or holding position. It lives in extremely cold water, and cold water slows down metabolism. A slower metabolism means the animal burns less energy, but also generates movement more slowly. A body built for slow, careful movement, with an explosive burst available for emergencies, fits this environment precisely. The fins let the squid hover at a target depth with small continuous adjustments. The mantle stays relaxed, saving energy. The fins do the work. When prey comes within range, the fins stop their gentle wave, and the mantle fires. The fins also contribute to directional control during a jet. When the squid fires backward, the fins can tilt and add a controlled angle to the trajectory. A squid fleeing a predator can fire its jet and simultaneously angle the fins to redirect sideways, making its escape path less predictable to the whale's sonar. Whether adult colossal squid actually use this combined maneuvering against sperm whales is unknown. The 2025 juvenile video showed the fins moving in a slow, wave-like pattern at rest, exactly what the fin size data predicted. Nobody has filmed an adult in a high-speed event. The fin material is notable too. Fin tissue in cephalopods contains a high density of muscle fibers running in multiple directions, allowing the fin to flex, stiffen, and bend in controlled combinations, rather than just flapping passively. The colossal squid's fins can actively shape themselves during movement. A fully stiffened fin produces more thrust per movement. A flexible fin produces more precise steering. The squid switches between these mid-motion without any detectable pause. Attaching fins of this size and complexity to a body moving through deep, pressurized water creates another challenge. The base of the fin, where it connects to the mantle, experiences large bending forces every time the fin moves against water resistance. In smaller animals, those forces are small enough that the attachment point handles them easily. At the colossal squid's scale, the force at that connection point becomes significant. Researchers found the fin attachment tissue to be dense and layered in the specimens examined, structurally reinforced, specifically at the join. The body keeps solving problems that it creates for itself just by being this large, and color plays into this system in a way that nobody expected until specimens were examined closely. A freshly caught colossal squid is deep reddish pink across its entire outer surface. The color is vivid, almost unsettling given the size of the animal. And that color is active, produced by living cells in the skin that the squid controls. The cells are called chromatophores. Every squid and octopus has them. They are small sacs filled with pigment, surrounded by muscle fibers. When the muscles contract, the sac stretches and the color shows. When the muscles relax, the sac shrinks and the color fades. The squid controls these muscles and therefore controls its own color, patch by patch across its skin. In shallow water relatives, chromatophores are the basis of rapid color changing. An octopus on a reef can shift from sand-colored to rock-patterned in under a second, matching its background perfectly. This is active camouflage, confirmed and well documented. The colossal squid lives in near-total darkness at depth. Active camouflage for background matching purposes is pointless where there is no visible light. So why does it have color-producing cells at all? And why does it settle into a permanent reddish pink as it matures? The answer involves how light behaves underwater. Red wavelengths of light get absorbed by water very quickly. By the time you are a few hundred feet deep, almost no red light reaches you. Red objects at that depth appear dark, close to black, because there is no red light left to reflect off them. The reddish-pink color of the adult colossal squid acts as a form of camouflage specific to deep water, making the animal appear dark and difficult to see against the black background of the deep ocean. This is confirmed in principle for deep-sea animals generally. Many deep ocean creatures use red or dark coloration for exactly this reason. What makes the colossal squid's version interesting is the transition. Juveniles are transparent, which is a completely different camouflage strategy. effective in the open upper water, where the squid starts its life. As the animal grows and descends deeper, the skin shifts to reddish pink. The squid changes its camouflage strategy. As it changes its environment, the body adapts its own appearance to match the depth it inhabits. Researchers noted that the reddish-pink skin peels off in distinct sheets when a specimen is brought to the surface. The pressure change disrupts the tissue integrity and the outer skin layer separates. This tells scientists that the skin structure is tightly calibrated for the pressure at depth and that it functions differently under surface conditions. Chromatophore-dense skin in cephalopods contains embedded sensory cells that detect light levels directly through the skin, separate from the eyes. The squid may sense ambient light changes across its entire body surface, giving it environmental awareness that goes beyond just what the eyes see. That light-sensing skin feeding information to an enormous brain is one thing. The eyes feeding that same brain are something else entirely. For the first phase of its life, the colossal squid is invisible. The juvenile body is fully transparent. Internal organs show through the skin as faint shadows. The muscle tissue has no pigment. The eyes are already large relative to the body, but sit inside a head you could almost see through. The animal drifts in the open water, and in the right light angle, it nearly disappears. The 2025 Schmidt Ocean Institute video captured a juvenile at about 2,000 feet deep. The footage showed a small squid roughly 8 inches long, hovering in the beam of a research submersible's light. Its body was almost entirely clear. Researchers watching the footage described it as glass-like. Transparent juveniles are a survival strategy called ontogenetic camouflage, where an animal's camouflage type changes as it grows. The transparency works because juvenile squid live in the mesopelagic zone, the twilight layer of the ocean, where faint sunlight filters down from above. In that faint light, a transparent body casts almost no shadow and reflects almost nothing. The animal becomes a visual ghost. A predator scanning that zone looking for something solid to eat would look straight through a transparent juvenile. The transparency comes from the absence of chromatophores in the skin and the high water content of the juvenile tissue. Baby squid are mostly water held in a very thin membrane. As the animal grows, muscle mass accumulates, organs develop further, and the chromatophores activate and multiply. The transparency fades gradually, replaced first by a faint pinkish tinge and then by the deep reddish color of the adult. The speed of this transition is unknown. Scientists have no confirmed data on how long the juvenile phase lasts or at what size the squid begins descending to deeper water. What the 2025 video also revealed was behavioral. The juvenile squid in the footage moved in a slow drifting pattern rather than active jetting. The fins were already present and functional, performing small wave-like adjustments. The mantle did fire occasionally in short pulses, but the animal mostly drifted. This passive movement matches a low-energy strategy suited to cold water. Even at 8 inches long, the squid was already conserving energy in a way that reflected the metabolic limits of the deep ocean environment it would spend its life in. The video was only a few minutes long, but those few minutes were the first direct observation of a living colossal squid in its natural habitat in 100 years of trying. Every previous data point came from dead animals, or from pieces found inside predators. Seeing the juvenile drift in that submersible beam was, for the research team, the equivalent of finally meeting someone you had only ever read about in second-hand reports. The juvenile's eyes were already striking in the footage, large, pale, and forward-facing relative to the body size, already built toward the extraordinary visual anatomy the adult animal carries. Those eyes develop into something that makes biologists genuinely uncomfortable when they calculate the energy and tissue cost required to grow and maintain them. At the exact center of the colossal squid's 8 arms sits a hard, sharp structure that looks nothing like the soft tissue surrounding it. The beak. It is made of a dark, rigid material, hard as a crab shell, curved like a bird's beak but far more compact. The upper and lower halves meet with a sharp cutting edge. When they close on something, they shear through it cleanly. The beak is how the squid eats. Everything it catches gets processed through this structure first. Here is what makes the beak anatomically strange. The squid's body is almost entirely soft, muscle, organ, fluid. And then buried at the meeting point of all 8, arms is a structure made of material rigid enough to snap bone. The contrast is extreme, the biological equivalent of finding a steel trap inside a bag of jelly. The beak connects to a muscular tongue-like structure called the radula. The radula is covered in small, hard teeth. After the beak slices a piece of prey apart, the radula pulls the pieces inward and begins grinding. The combination of beak and radula gives the squid a 2-stage mechanical processing system before food even reaches the stomach. This matters because of where the brain sits. In squid, the brain is located inside the head, directly behind and around the esophagus, the tube food travels through. In smaller squid, this is manageable. Food pieces are small, and the esophagus is wide enough to let them pass through the brain ring without issue. In the colossal squid, the esophagus passes directly through the center of the brain. Any food piece too large to fit through that narrow channel would damage the brain on its way to the stomach. The beak and radula have to process every piece of food down to a size small enough to pass safely through the squid's own brain before it can be swallowed. That is a confirmed design constraint. The implication is significant. Despite its size, the colossal squid cannot simply bite off large chunks and swallow them. Every meal requires precise mechanical processing before ingestion. The beak does the cutting, the radula does the grinding. The resulting pieces are small enough to travel through the brain channel safely. How fast this processing happens in a live animal is unknown. The beak muscles in dissected specimens appear strong and well developed. Based on beak size and muscle attachment points, researchers estimate the bite force is substantial, enough to handle large, thick-bodied fish. The beak is also the only part of the squid's body that preserves well inside predators. Soft tissue digests. The beak does not, which is why the first confirmed evidence of colossal squid often came from beaks found inside whale stomachs. The beak survives long after everything else is gone. Sperm whales have been found with dozens of colossal squid beaks in their stomachs simultaneously. That single fact tells scientists more about the colossal squid's population density in certain waters than almost any other data point. The 8 arms surrounding that beak each carry their own weapons, and those weapons are where the squid's anatomy takes a turn that no other animal has matched. The 8 arms of the colossal squid radiate outward from around the beak. They range from about 2.5 feet to nearly 4 feet in length. Each arm tapers to a point and carries 2 rows of weapons along its inner surface, a combination of suckers and hooks that work together to grip and hold prey. The suckers come first. They line the inner surface of each arm and work the way you expect. Suction. They grip on contact and hold. Each sucker rim is edged with sharp serrations made of calcium, hard mineral material that bites into flesh when the sucker presses down. These are not smooth rubber cups. They are serrated rings that grip and cut simultaneously. Then come the hooks. Along the middle section of each arm, the suckers give way to hard, curved hooks. Each hook has 3 points, a main claw and 2 smaller flanking cusps. The main claw curves sharply inward. When it digs into flesh, the flanking cusps lock the hook's position and resist the fish pulling away. The more a fish struggles, the deeper those 3 points embed. The hooks on the 8 arms do not rotate, they are fixed in position. Their function is hold, not grip and adjust. Once embedded in a fish, the arm hooks are designed to keep the animal anchored while the rest of the squid's anatomy handles the processing. Here is the physical reality of what this looks like. A fish, struck by the colossal squid, makes contact with 8 arms simultaneously. Each arm presses its sucker rows and hook rows Microsoft against the fish's body. The serrated sucker rims cut the surface. The 3-pronged hooks dig into the flesh at multiple points along each arm's length. The fish is held across its entire body by dozens of anchoring points, suckers cutting, hooks embedded, all 8 arms coordinating to prevent any movement. The grip produced by this system is distributed and redundant. Even if the fish frees itself from several sucker points, the hooks hold. Even if it pulls an arm partially loose, the remaining 7 arms maintain the hold. The system is designed with failure tolerance built in. Researchers examining arm anatomy noted that the hook stalks are thick and deeply rooted into the arm tissue. They are difficult to break even when force is applied directly. This suggests the hooks are meant to hold under the force of a large, panicking fish fighting at full strength. The calcium composition of the sucker serrations is also notable. Calcium structures in squid arms are rare in the cephalopod family and represent a specific evolutionary move toward harder, more durable gripping surfaces. The colossal squid invested biological resources in making its grip permanent rather than strong. The arms deliver the prey to the beak. The beak processes it. All of that is handled by the 8 arms and their fixed hooks. The 2 tentacles operate completely differently. And what those tentacles can do is where this story takes a turn that has no parallel anywhere in animal biology. The sucker system on the colossal squid's arms deserves its own chapter because it is more complex and more destructive than the previous chapter's description fully captures. Each arm carries 2 rows of suckers running along the inner surface from base to tip. In a fully grown adult, the total number of individual suckers across all 8 arms runs into the hundreds. Each one is a separate anchoring device. The sucker structure works through negative pressure, the same physical principle as a suction cup on a bathroom wall. The sucker rim presses against a surface and the center pulls back, creating a partial vacuum that holds the sucker in place. In dry air, suction cups are reliable but limited. In water, the system works differently. Water is incompressible. When a suction cup creates a vacuum against a wet surface, the surrounding water pushes inward and reinforces the seal from the outside. A suction grip in water is harder to break than the same grip in air. The colossal squid operates entirely in water, so every sucker grip it creates benefits from this reinforcement. Now add the calcium serrations. The rim of each sucker on the colossal squid's arms is edged with a ring of hard, sharp points made of calcium. These points angle inward toward the center of the sucker. When the sucker presses down on a fish's body and creates its vacuum seal, the serrated rim simultaneously bites into the surface of the fish's skin. The suction holds the position. The serrations cut through the outer layer. The 2 mechanisms work together on contact, one holding, one penetrating. This is why scars from colossal squid encounters show up on sperm whales as rings, circular marks, the diameter of a sucker rim pressed hard enough to leave a permanent trace in whale skin. The calcium in the serrations raises a specific biological question. Calcium structures require the animal to absorb and maintain calcium reserves, which costs metabolic energy. The squid is allocating biological resources specifically to make its sucker rims harder than standard squid tissue allows. This investment suggests the prey the colossal squid hunts is tough-skinned enough that plain sucker rims without serrations would lose grip under struggle. The serrations exist because the prey fights. What kind of prey fights hard enough to justify serrated calcium sucker rims on a 1,000-pound animal? Researchers estimate the colossal squid likely hunts large fish species in the deep Southern Ocean, including the Patagonian toothfish, which is a substantial muscular fish that grows to 5 feet long and weighs up to 220 pounds. A fish that size fighting at full strength would pull at a grip hard. The serrations prevent that pull from working. Here is the detail that takes this further. The serrations on the suckers leave microscopic traces in the prey's skin. Fragments of calcium serration material have been found embedded in toothfish tissue, recovered from whale stomachs alongside squid beaks. The suckers were literally shaving material from the prey's surface during the grip. The 8 arms with their serrated suckers and fixed hooks are the secondary weapons system. Powerful, redundant, and built for holding. The primary strike weapon is something else entirely. longer than a person is tall, and equipped with joints that spin in ways biology had never documented before this animal was examined. The colossal squid has 2 tentacles extending from below the arms. They are longer than the arms. A mature adult's tentacles measure about 6.5 feet in length. They retract into pockets in the head when not in use. When extended for hunting, they reach well beyond the tips of the 8 arms, giving the squid a striking range larger than its entire arm span. This distinction between arms and tentacles is important. The arms are gripping and holding tools. The tentacles are striking tools. The 2 systems do different jobs and have completely different anatomy to match. The tentacle body is smooth along most of its length. No suckers, no hooks along the shaft. It is built for speed. A smooth surface moves through water with less drag. When the squid strikes, these tentacles shoot outward from the retracted position to full extension very quickly. Adding surface texture along the shaft would slow that extension down. The tip of each tentacle is different. The smooth shaft ends in a wide, flat club shape, the tentacle club. The club is where all the gripping hardware lives. Suckers line the inner surface of the club in multiple rows, and in the center rows of those clubs sit the rotating hooks. The club design concentrates the entire gripping system into the part of the tentacle that actually makes contact with prey. The shaft delivers speed, the club delivers grip. The functions are separated by anatomy into 2 distinct zones on one structure. Here is what happens mechanically during a strike. The tentacles extend from their retracted pockets at high speed. The smooth shafts shoot outward. The clubs at the end arrive at the prey's body first. On contact, the sucker rows on the club press against the prey. The hooks engage. The tentacle curls around the contact point, wrapping the club surface against the prey's body. From extension to full grip, the event happens fast enough that the fish has limited time to react. The tentacle then does something a rigid arm cannot do easily. It pulls back toward the squid's body, retracting the gripped prey inward and delivering it toward the waiting arms. The arms close around the fish once it is in range. The combined grip of tentacle clubs and arm suckers holds the fish while the beak processes it. This sequence turns the 2 tentacles into a ranged capture system, a set of fast extending arms with gripping clubs that bring prey in from beyond the reach of the main arms. The tentacle muscles, despite the speed of the extension movement, are not particularly thick. The tentacles achieve their fast strike not through massive muscle force, but through a catapult-like tension and releases system in the tentacle base, where energy stores up and releases suddenly. This mechanical solution is elegant, and the hooks at the end of those clubs are where the colossal squid produces something completely unique in the animal kingdom. At the center of each tentacle club, in the rows running down the middle, sit the hooks. 22 to 25 of them per club, confirmed. Each hook curves sharply at the tip. Each hook sits on a short, thick stalk, and each stalk connects to the club tissue through a rotating ball joint. 360 degrees of rotation, any direction. A full circle. This feature exists in no other animal on Earth. Every other hooked structure in the animal kingdom, in birds, in fish, in insects, in other cephalopods, is fixed in one position. The hook points in a direction and stays there. The grip depends on the hook being in the right position when contact happens. The colossal squid's tentacle hooks can reposition after contact. Here is why that is significant. When a large fish is struck and gripped by the tentacle clubs, it does not stop moving. It fights. It twists, rolls, and pulls in any direction it can manage. A fixed hook at a specific angle can be partially defeated by rotating the body underneath it. If the fish turns far enough, the hook's angle becomes unfavorable and the grip weakens. A rotating hook follows the twist. If the fish rolls left, the hook rolls with it. The tip stays embedded in the flesh, regardless of how the fish repositions. The angle of the hook relative to the tissue it is gripping adjusts continuously. Each of the 22 to 25 hooks on a single club operates independently. They do not all rotate together in one direction. Each responds to the specific forces acting on it individually. A fish pressing against one part of the club causes hooks in that area to adjust, while hooks elsewhere hold their current position. Whether the squid actively controls the hook rotation through its nervous system or whether the hooks rotate passively in response to mechanical force is still unknown. The research team that examined the hook joints found the ball joint mechanism to be entirely passive in structure, with no muscle fibers attached to rotate the stalk. This suggests the rotation is driven by the mechanical forces of the struggling prey. If that is confirmed, the hooks are self-adjusting grips. The harder the fish fights, the more the hooks rotate to maintain position. The prey's own escape attempts keep tightening the grip. The hook stalks themselves are thick and rigid, made of the same chitin material as the gladius. They do not flex. They do not bend. The stalk transfers the force of the fish's pull directly to the club tissue and the squid's arm, rather than absorbing it. Biologists examining the rotating hook system described it as a mechanical solution to a problem that most predators solve through speed or venom. The colossal squid solves prey escape through grip geometry. Get the hooks in, let physics do the rest. 2 clubs, up to 50 total rotating hooks between them, and the fish is not going anywhere, but the clubs and their hooks are the second thing you notice about the tentacles. The first thing anyone notices immediately is the eyes behind them. The full grip system of the colossal squid works as an integrated machine. Each part connects to the others, and the combination produces a hold that researchers describe as close to mechanically unbreakable from the inside. Start with first contact. The tentacle clubs arrive at the prey's body. Multiple sucker rows press down simultaneously. Each sucker pulls back, creating a vacuum seal against the fish's surface. The serrated rims on the sucker edges dig in, cutting past the slick, scale-covered exterior that plain suction would slide off. The hooks in the center rows embed on impact. The tips curve inward into the flesh. The rotating ball joints allow the tips to angle themselves on entry, finding the path of least resistance into the tissue. The hooks do not need to arrive at a perfect angle to embed effectively. They adjust on contact. Now the fish fights back. A large fish, even one that weighs a fraction of the squid's total mass, produces significant force when it panics. Muscle groups across the fish's entire body engage. The fish rolls, bends, twists, pulls straight back along its body axis with its tail. Against a fixed grip, the roll would be the most effective escape attempt. Rolling shifts the angle between the grip point and the embedded hook, gradually working the hook tip sideways through the entry wound until it disengages. Against the rotating hooks, the roll does nothing. The ball joint follows the roll. The hook tip stays embedded in the same tissue it entered, now pointing in a new direction but still anchored. The exit path the roll was creating closes. The pullback along the body axis, the fish driving its tail and trying to swim away, transfers force through the hooks into the squid's tentacle. The squid either holds position and absorbs that pull through its tentacle muscles, or it extends slightly and then retracts, using the pull force to bring the fish closer. This is where the coordination with the arms becomes critical. The 8 arms, with their own fixed hooks and serrated suckers, need to reach the fish. The tentacles do the capture and begin the draw. The arms close around the fish as it is pulled in range. Once the arms engage, the grip multiplies. The fish is now held by tentacle clubs with rotating hooks and sucker serrations, plus arm hooks embedded at multiple points, plus arm sucker serrations cutting additional hold points. Researchers have theorized that a fully engaged grip from all 10 appendages, 2 tentacles and 8 arms on a fish of the size the colossal squid likely hunts would require muscle force exceeding what the fish's body can generate. To escape, the fish is not strong enough to pull free. The beak is already positioned at the center of the arm ring. The prey arrives, held from all directions. The beak begins its work, This system depends on speed at the start. The tentacles have to reach the prey before it detects the threat and moves. In near total darkness at depth, with no ambient light to reveal the squid's position, the window for detection is short. The squid has one more tool for hunting in darkness, a tool so extreme in its engineering that it still generates active disagreement among biologists about whether any animal truly needs eyes this large. The colossal squid's eye measures 10.5 inches across. 10.5 inches. That is wider than a standard basketball. It is the largest eye ever documented in the entire animal kingdom, across every species alive today and in the fossil record. That measurement comes from a single confirmed specimen examined by scientists. The eye had a lens the size of an orange. The pupil opening measured several inches in diameter. The entire structure was backed by a light-sensitive retina covering a wide arc behind the lens. At first, this seems like an obvious adaptation. Big eye equals more light collected equals better vision in the dark. The logic is clean and makes immediate sense. Then you do the math, and the logic breaks down. The colossal squid's eye is dramatically larger than any known deep-sea animal would need it to be, based on the available light at depth. Marine biologists have modeled how much light reaches the squid's habitat. They have calculated how large an eye needs to be to collect useful amounts of that light. The answer comes out to an eye significantly smaller than what the squid actually has. The squid's eye collects far more light than the environment contains enough light to use. Researchers studying this discrepancy in 2012 proposed a specific theory. The extra eye size and lens diameter are sized precisely for detecting one type of light source that no other prey species would need to watch for, the bioluminescence produced by a moving sperm whale. Sperm whales do not glow. They are not bioluminescent themselves, but when a large body moves through deep ocean water, it disturbs the small bioluminescent organisms floating around it. These tiny creatures, billions of them throughout the deep sea, produce brief flashes of light when disturbed. A sperm whale moving through the water produces a wake of tiny lights. At distances that would be invisible to a smaller eye, the colossal squid's enormous lens could detect that bioluminescent wake, the scattered flickers of disturbed organisms tracing the path of an approaching whale. This gives the squid early warning. A small eye sees the whale when it is already close. A massive eye sees the whale's light trail when the whale is still far enough away to allow escape. The theory fits the size discrepancy cleanly. The extra lens diameter beyond what prey detection requires maps almost exactly to the additional distance needed to detect a whale-scale bioluminescent wake. The eye also carries a photophore, a light-producing organ, near the base in some examined specimens. Whether this is functional or vestigial is currently unknown. The pupil is not round. It is a wide horizontal crescent shape, giving the eye a field of view that covers more of the water above and below the squid than a round pupil would. The squid sees more of the vertical plane around it, which is the plane that matters most in open ocean hunting, where threats and prey come from above or below. One eye that size would already be extraordinary. The colossal squid has two, 600 meters down. The sun is gone. Stand on the surface of the Southern Ocean on a clear day, and sunlight reaches you from every direction. Go down 30 feet, and colors start disappearing. Red goes first, then orange. By the time you pass 300 feet, the water is a deep, featureless blue. Past 600 feet, even that blue is gone. The water is black. This is where the colossal squid lives as a juvenile. Adult squid descend much deeper. In that darkness, three things produce light: bioluminescent animals, organisms that generate their own glow through chemical reactions in their bodies, the faint, distant glow of the sun pressing down from thousands of feet above, too weak to illuminate anything, and the disturbance flashes produced when anything large moves through water full of bioluminescent plankton. The squid's eye is built for all three. The lens is enormous. A larger lens gathers more light the same way a larger bucket gathers more rain. In an environment where the available light is measured in individual photons rather than beams, gathering power matters more than any other optical quality. The retina behind the lens contains photoreceptors packed at high density across a wide surface. More receptors across a bigger area means the eye can process more of the gathered light as useful visual information, rather than noise. The signal becomes cleaner even when the input is nearly zero. The squid's eye almost certainly cannot see color at depth. Color vision requires multiple types of photoreceptors tuned to different wavelengths. Deep-sea animals, including the colossal squid, based on available evidence, likely use a single photoreceptor type optimized for detecting the blue-green wavelengths that penetrate deepest into the ocean. Blue-green is exactly the color most bioluminescent animals produce. This means the squid's visual system is tuned to the one type of light that exists in its environment. It does not waste receptor space on wavelengths that never arrive. Every part of the eye's design is pointed at maximum sensitivity to a narrow light spectrum in near total darkness. The result is a visual system that probably sees the deep ocean in a way no human can truly picture. Imagine walking through a completely dark room where the only things visible are faint blue glows. Some glow steady, some flash, some trace moving paths through the dark. The squid reads all of this as a continuous stream of information about what is nearby, what is moving, and how large it is. A glowing creature drifting slowly is prey. A sudden bright flash from a large disturbance is something else. Something much bigger. The eye's horizontal crescent pupil shapes the visual field in a specific way. The wide horizontal opening lets in light from a broad arc across the squid's left and right. But the crescent shape also emphasizes the upper and lower visual plane. In open water, the most important spatial directions are up and down. Prey tends to drift above. Predators tend to come from above or below. The pupil shape is an engineering solution to that spatial problem. Confirmed anatomy. Confirmed function for gathering light. Theoretical explanation for the extreme size that fits the data better than any competing idea currently proposed. What comes next pushes the eye story further, because the size of the eye relative to the threat it evolved to detect says something uncomfortable about how long the colossal squid has been fighting the same enemy. The colossal squid and the sperm whale have been in the same ocean for millions of years. Sperm whales hunt by sound. They produce clicking pulses from a specialized organ in their head, send those pulses outward through the water, and read the echoes that bounce back. The returning echoes map the environment around the whale in 3 dimensions. A fish, a squid, a rock on the seafloor. Each produces a different echo pattern. The whale identifies prey by the shape of its echo. This echolocation system works in complete darkness. The whale does not need light. It does not need to see the squid at all. It needs only to hear it. The squid, in response, needs early warning before the whale's clicking sounds give away its own position. Once the whale's echolocation detects the squid, the whale already knows exactly where the squid is. The time available for escape from that point is short, because sperm whales are fast and the squid is large enough to register clearly on the whale's sonar at significant range. The squid needs to know the whale is coming before the whale knows the squid is there. This is the problem the enormous eye solves. Sperm whales are large animals, confirmed at up to 60 feet long and 100,000 pounds. A body that size moving through water filled with bioluminescent plankton creates a visible disturbance. The plankton flash as the whale displaces them. The flashes trace the whale's path and body outline in faint blue-green light. The critical number is detection distance. How far away can the squid detect the whale's bioluminescent wake before the whale's echolocation returns a useful echo of the squid? Researchers modeling this in 2012 calculated that a standard cephalopod eye, sized for normal prey detection, would detect the bioluminescent wake of an approaching whale at roughly 80 to 100 feet. At that distance, a sperm whale moving at speed gives the squid very little time to react. The colossal squid's actual eye diameter increases that detection distance considerably. The larger lens gathers enough additional light to detect the bioluminescent wake at distances several times greater than a standard cephalopod eye could manage. At that increased distance, the squid has time to orient, time to decide on a direction, time to begin moving before the whale closes. The eye size matches this problem so precisely that many researchers consider it the most likely evolutionary driver of the extreme eye development. A slightly larger eye gives slightly more warning time. More warning time means more individuals survive encounters. Surviving individuals pass the large eye trait to the next generation. Over millions of years of sperm whale predation, the eye grows to the size we see today. The colossal squid's extraordinary eye is, in this framing, a direct record of a very long predator-prey relationship. Every millimeter of extra lens diameter is a consequence of how dangerous the sperm whale is. That relationship goes both directions, and the evidence of what happens when these two animals actually meet is written permanently into the skin of the whales themselves. The sperm whale is the largest predator on Earth with teeth. A full-grown male reaches 60 feet long and weighs close to 100,000 pounds. Its head alone makes up roughly 1/3 of its total body length, and most of that head is dedicated to the sound-producing apparatus it uses to hunt. The clicking pulses a sperm whale produces are among the loudest sounds any animal generates, loud enough to stun prey at close range. This animal hunts the colossal squid. The size difference is enormous. The squid weighs 1,100 pounds, at maximum confirmed size. The whale weighs nearly 100 times that. In terms of raw mass, this is similar to a house cat hunting a mouse, except the mouse has hooks that rotate 360 degrees and eyes the size of basketballs. Sperm whales dive deep. Confirmed dives reach over 6,000 feet, deeper than most submarines operate. The colossal squid's habitat overlaps substantially with the depth range the whale reaches on hunting dives. Both animals spend time in the same zone of ocean, in total darkness, where sound works and light does not. The whale has every physical advantage: mass, speed, echolocation, and teeth designed to grip slippery prey. Its teeth sit in the lower jaw only, fitting into sockets in the upper jaw when closed. The grip produced by this arrangement on a large squid would be powerful and difficult to break. The squid's defenses are information and speed. The enormous eye gives early warning. The jet propulsion provides escape acceleration. The ink system creates a brief visual disruption, though ink clouds do nothing against echolocation. Against a whale actively locked onto the squid's echo, escape requires moving faster than the whale can close the remaining distance. Sperm whales can swim at over 10 miles per hour in bursts. The squid's jet propulsion is faster than its sustained swimming speed, but the jet requires muscle recovery between pulses. Sustained high-speed flight uses energy reserves at a rate the squid's metabolism struggles to maintain. The whale wins most of these encounters. This is confirmed by the volume of colossal squid beaks found inside whale stomachs. One whale examined after stranding contained dozens of beaks. The stomach contents suggested regular, successful squid hunting over a long period. The squid does not win most encounters. The species survives anyway, which means reproduction rates are high enough to replace the individuals lost to whale predation. What the squid does during the encounters, it does survive, reveals something about those hooks and that mass. Because the whales do not come away clean, researchers examining sperm whales have found something consistent across many individuals: circular scars, permanent marks on the skin around the face and jaw. Each scar is a ring, the exact diameter of a colossal squid sucker rim. Some scars overlap, some show in clusters, some are fresh, some are old enough to have healed into raised tissue. These scars are confirmed physical evidence of colossal squid contact with sperm whales. The scars appear specifically on the face and around the mouth, because that is where the whale makes first contact when attacking. The whale approaches the squid, mouth opening to grip. The squid's arms and tentacles are already deployed. The tentacle clubs hit the whale's face area first, pressing sucker rims against the whale's skin hard enough to leave marks. The serrated calcium rims on the suckers cut through the whale's outer skin layer. Whale skin is thick, far thicker than fish skin, made to handle the pressure of deep ocean dives. The fact that colossal squid sucker serrations leave permanent scars in whale skin tells you exactly how much force the squid was applying during contact. These were hard grips pressing with enough force and sharpness to permanently scar an animal that evolved thick skin specifically for surviving extreme conditions. Some whales carry more than 100 individual scar rings on their faces. That individual whale survived more than 100 separate contacts with colossal squid. Encounters that left marks, encounters the whale won, since it survived, but encounters where the squid pressed hard enough to mark the whale permanently. The hook scars tell a slightly different story. Some circular scars on whales show a central puncture mark inside the ring, the signature of a hook embedding inside the sucker contact point. These marks confirm that the squid's tentacle clubs made full contact during the encounter, sucker rims and hooks together. A hook embedded in whale skin and then pulled free leaves a specific exit wound shape. These exit wound patterns show up in the scar tissue on examined whales. The hooks went in, the squid was gripped onto the whale. Then the encounter resolved, the whale ate the squid, and the hook pulled free as the squid was consumed. Or the squid escaped. The scar evidence cannot tell us which outcome produced each specific mark. What the scar evidence confirms beyond dispute is that these are physical, violent encounters between two animals where the squid is not a passive victim. The squid is gripping back. Hard. An animal that weighs 1,100 pounds and has 50 rotating hooks and hundreds of serrated sucker rims pressing against your face is not a passive meal. It is a fight, and the scars are the permanent record of every fight the whale survived. Picture the encounter from the squid's perspective. The squid is hovering in total darkness at depth. Its enormous eyes pick up a faint pattern in the bioluminescent plankton ahead, a wake of disturbed flashes tracing a path through the dark. Something large is coming. The pattern is familiar. The squid begins orienting toward an escape direction. The whale's clicking pulses arrive. The squid registers the sound pressure through sensory organs along its body. The echolocation has found it. The whale knows exactly where the squid is. The window for clean escape has closed. The squid fires its jet. A violent mantle contraction pushes the animal backward at speed. The tail fins angle to redirect the trajectory sideways, making the escape path less predictable to the whale's sonar. The squid fires ink, a thick cloud releasing into the water behind it as it jets away. The ink does nothing against the whale's sound-based detection. The whale continues closing. At this point, the encounter comes down to whether the squid can jet far enough and fast enough to open a gap the whale cannot close before its next dive. Breath forces it toward the surface. Sometimes the gap does not open. The whale closes and the mouth comes in. Here is where the squid's anatomy turns defensive. The arms deploy, all 8 extend outward, hooks and serrated suckers facing the incoming threat. The tentacle clubs extend past the arm tips, hooks ready. The squid presents the whale's face with the most hostile possible contact surface. The whale's mouth closes on the squid's body. The squid grips the whale's face simultaneously. The rotating hooks on the tentacle clubs embed in the whale's skin around the jaw. The arm hooks dig into whatever surface the arms contact. The sucker serrations cut into the whale's facial skin. The whale is trying to grip the squid. The squid is gripping the whale back. What happens during this phase is genuinely unknown because nobody has observed it directly. The physics suggest the squid can apply meaningful force. 50 rotating hooks embedded in whale skin, held by 1,100 pounds of muscle, represent a substantial load. The whale would have to pull against all of those grip points to reposition the squid for swallowing. The squid continues firing its jet during the encounter, based on what researchers believe from the anatomy. The mantle can contract even while the arms are deployed and the body is being gripped. Each jet pulse during an active encounter would push the squid's body away from the whale, applying outward force against the whale's grip. This is not an escape attempt at this stage. The squid cannot break free. The jet is adding resistance, making the whale work harder to hold and position the squid. The whale wins, the squid is consumed, but the whale carries the scar evidence of the grip for years afterward. The most powerful predator in the deep ocean has permanent marks from this fight on its face. And there is another angle to this story, one that flips the question entirely, because researchers have started asking whether the colossal squid is only ever the prey in this ocean. The colossal squid has always been framed as prey in its relationship with sperm whales. That framing is understandable. The whale is larger, faster over distance, and armed with echolocation that makes darkness irrelevant. The whale hunts the squid. This is confirmed by stomach contents, by scar evidence, by decades of observation. But the colossal squid's anatomy tells a different story about what this animal does outside of those encounters. The rotating hooks are a hunting tool. They are specifically designed to maintain grip on struggling prey that fights back hard. A purely defensive animal, one that only needed to escape predators, would not evolve a grip system this elaborate. The grip system implies the squid regularly hunts something large enough and strong enough to require 50 rotating self-adjusting hooks to hold. The beak is sized for serious prey. The cutting force a beak this size can generate exceeds what would be necessary for small passive fish. The calcium serrated suckers on the arms are engineered for prey that resists. The three-pronged fixed arm hooks are designed for sustained hold against struggling. Every offensive feature of the colossal squid's anatomy is scaled beyond what passive prey capture would require. Researchers believe the colossal squid actively hunts the Patagonian toothfish, a large muscular fish that grows to 5 feet long and fights hard when caught. The toothfish is found in the same deep southern ocean waters the squid inhabits. The squid's anatomy fits the challenge of hunting this specific prey well. But the question goes further than toothfish. Some researchers have raised the possibility that adult colossal squid may occasionally prey on smaller squid species, including juveniles of their own species. Cannibalism among cephalopods is documented in other species. The colossal squid's anatomy would be capable of it, but no direct evidence of this behavior has been confirmed. The deeper unknown is whether the colossal squid is an active pursuit predator or an ambush predator. A pursuit predator moves through its environment searching for prey, like a shark. An ambush predator holds position and waits for prey to come within range, like an anglerfish. The colossal squid's high-energy jet system suggests it is capable of pursuit. Its deep-water cold environment and slow metabolism suggest ambush costs less energy. The 2025 juvenile video showed drifting, passive behavior, but juveniles are not adults. Adult behavior in the wild has never been observed. What the anatomy argues for is a hunter that evolved specifically to capture large, strong prey in complete darkness at extreme depth. Whether it chases that prey or waits for it to arrive is a question the ocean has not yet answered. The ocean has kept this animal secret for a very long time. 100 years of trying, a handful of usable specimens. That ratio is extraordinary for a confirmed species of this size. The colossal squid is the heaviest invertebrate on Earth. It is not microscopic. It is not rare in the way that some deep-sea fish are rare, with only occasional detections across vast ocean areas. Sperm whale stomach contents suggest the squid is a regular, substantial part of the whale's diet across the Southern Ocean. Population size, though unknown precisely, is likely significant. So why do scientists have almost nothing to study? The Southern Ocean is the answer. The body of water surrounding Antarctica is one of the most hostile environments for human activity on Earth. Storms are frequent and severe. Seas run exceptionally rough even by deep ocean standards. Temperatures drop fast. The nearest major research infrastructure is thousands of miles away on other continents. Operating research vessels there is expensive, logistically difficult, and limited by weather windows that close fast and stay closed for months. Most scientific expeditions to the Southern Ocean focus on accessible targets, seabed geology, Antarctic ice, known fish populations. Deploying the specialized equipment needed to observe deep-sea animals in that environment requires funding levels that are hard to justify for a single species. The colossal squid also lives deep. The adults descend to depths that require remotely operated vehicles with pressure-rated systems to reach. These vehicles cost millions of dollars to build and operate. Sending one to depth in the Southern Ocean while managing a research vessel in rough surface conditions multiplies the operational complexity significantly. And the squid does not cooperate. The animal is large but not dense in any specific location the way fish schools are. It does not aggregate in patterns that make it predictable. It moves at depth in ways science cannot track, because acoustic tagging of these animals has never been successfully completed. You cannot follow what you cannot tag. The specimens that have been examined arrived by accident. The 1925 tentacles came from inside a whale a whaling crew had already caught. The 2003 full specimen came up tangled in a fishing longline. The equipment was not designed for the squid. The squid simply became entangled in it. These accidental captures have driven almost everything known about the colossal squid's anatomy. A century of biological knowledge about the largest invertebrate on Earth rests on a small number of dead animals that came up in gear meant for something else. Each specimen added information that immediately raised new questions. Each answered anatomy created an unknown behavior. Each confirmed body part connected to an unobserved function. The 2003 specimen moved the science forward more than anything before it. It had anatomy that changed several published descriptions of the species. In April of 2003, a longline fishing vessel called the Sam Aspiring was working the Ross Sea off Antarctica. The crew was targeting Patagonian toothfish. Longlines drop baited hooks at depth and weight, standard commercial fishing for a high-value species. The crew had done this hundreds of times. When they began hauling the line back to the surface, something was on it that weighed considerably more than a toothfish. The animal came up tangled around the line, partially eating a hooked toothfish when it was caught. It was a colossal squid, female, largely intact. The crew photographed it, secured it in cold storage, and contacted scientists as quickly as possible. Researchers reached the vessel and the specimen before significant decomposition set in. The examination that followed produced new information at almost every step. The eye size exceeded published estimates. Prior descriptions based on partial specimens had proposed a maximum eye diameter of around 10 inches. The 2003 specimen's eye measured larger than that in both diameter and lens thickness. The photoreceptor surface area was substantially greater than previous models had calculated. The hook anatomy on the tentacle clubs showed details that the 1925 tentacle examination had not fully captured. The rotating ball joint mechanism was more complex than described. The range of motion was wider. The stalk thickness and rigidity exceeded what earlier researchers had estimated from the partial specimens available to them. The gladius, examined in full for the first time in an intact adult, was proportionally larger and more rigid than expected. Its structural role in the mantle became clearer once researchers could see how the mantle muscles attached to it along its full length. The mantle wall thickness measurement contradicted existing estimates. Prior models had predicted the wall would be thinner, consistent with a more standard cephalopod body plan. The actual wall was significantly denser, with muscle fiber architecture, unlike anything documented in related species. These were not minor corrections. Several fundamental descriptions of the species in existing literature had to be updated. The 2003 specimen essentially rewrote portions of colossal squid biology. It also raised new questions immediately. The stomach contents showed partial remains of a large toothfish, confirming active hunting of substantial prey. The reproductive organs were examined, but provided limited information about breeding behavior. The nervous system was mapped as thoroughly as decomposition allowed, revealing a complexity slightly beyond prior cephalopod models for an animal this size. Scientists spent years publishing findings from this one specimen. And then, 22 years after the 2003 catch, something happened that no one had managed in 100 years of trying. Someone saw one alive. On the 21st of February 2025, a remotely operated vehicle from the Schmidt Ocean Institute descended to roughly 2,000 feet in the Southern Ocean near the South Sandwich Islands. The research vessel above was conducting a broader deep-sea survey. The camera system on the remotely operated vehicle was running continuously, recording whatever appeared in its lights. This is standard procedure. Most of what those cameras record is empty water. At around 1,900 feet, the lights illuminated something hovering in the dark. 8 inches long, transparent, fins moving in slow, deliberate waves. A small squid, unmistakably identifiable by shape and by the already visible tentacle clubs, drifting in the beam of the vehicle's lights. The research team watching the live feed recognized the species immediately. A juvenile colossal squid, the first living individual of this species, ever captured on camera in its natural habitat. The footage lasted several minutes before the squid moved out of frame. In those minutes, the research team captured behavioral data that no amount of dead specimen examination could have provided. The squid's movement pattern was passive. It drifted rather than actively jetting. The fins handled all position adjustment, working in the slow wave pattern that fin anatomy predicted, but nobody had confirmed with a live animal. The mantle made no visible contraction during the filmed period. The transparency was complete. Organs showed as faint internal shadows. The eyes were large relative to the body, already striking in an animal 8 inches long. The tentacles were retracted, confirming that resting position is the default state for tentacle storage. The squid appeared uninterested in the vehicle's lights. It did not jet away. It did not deploy its arms. It drifted. This passive response to a light source in complete darkness raises a question scientists are still discussing. Did the squid not perceive the vehicle as a threat? Did it perceive it and choose passive response as a defense? Or was it simply too small and young to have developed the reflexive threat responses of an adult? Unknown. The footage reached the scientific community within days of the dive and circulated widely. The images of that transparent, drifting juvenile represented 100 years of failed attempts finally producing a result. One team member on the research vessel described the moment of recognition as one of the strangest experiences of her career. She had spent years working with dead specimens. Seeing the animal breathe and move in real time, in its actual environment, was something the anatomy on a dissection table had never prepared her for. The video told scientists the juvenile was alive, mobile, and behaving consistently with what the anatomy predicted. It told them nothing about adult behavior, reproduction, hunting, or the mechanics of a real encounter with a sperm whale. Those questions remain entirely open, and they may stay open for a very long time, because of something specific the squid does when it meets the surface. Every colossal squid specimen brought to the surface arrives damaged. The damage is not from the capture process alone. Even specimens handled carefully show a specific pattern of deterioration that happens as the animal rises through the water column toward the surface. The outer skin layer separates. It peels away from the underlying tissue in distinct flat sheets. The reddish-pink color that defines the adult animal comes away with this outer layer, leaving the tissue beneath exposed. By the time a specimen reaches the surface fully, the skin has already begun this process. This is pressure damage. The colossal squid's skin is calibrated for the pressure environment it inhabits. At depth, the water column above pushes down with enormous force. The tissue structure of the outer skin layer is optimized to function under that specific external load. The cell walls, the fluid distribution within the tissue, the adhesion between skin layers, all of it is tuned for high-pressure conditions. As the animal rises, that external pressure drops. The tissue structure built for high-pressure experiences a rapid change in the mechanical forces acting on it. The outer skin layer, most exposed to pressure change, loses the compression that kept it adhered to the underlying tissue. It separates. Think of it like this: a material compressed tightly against another surface holds well while the compression continues. Remove the compression suddenly, and the bond relaxes. The outer skin of the colossal squid is held in place partly by the pressure of the ocean itself. Bring the animal to the surface, and the pressure that acted as a structural component disappears in minutes. This has direct implications for how much useful information can be extracted from surface specimens. Tissue that has experienced rapid pressure change is degraded from its living state. The cell structure has altered. Fluid that was under pressure has shifted. Chemical processes that depended on pressure-stable conditions have changed. A specimen examined at the surface is not in the state it was in while alive at depth. This means that even the best preserved colossal squid specimens give scientists a picture of the animal's anatomy under conditions that do not match its actual living environment. Some measurements may be accurate: body length, hook structure, eye diameter. Others may reflect the effects of decompression rather than the true living state. The muscle density measurements from the 2003 specimen, for example, may underestimate the tissue density in a living animal at depth, where compression from external pressure adds to the structural integrity of the tissue. What the squid actually feels like and how its tissue actually behaves at 2,000 feet down, under the pressure of nearly a mile of water above it, has never been directly observed in an adult. The juvenile video showed nothing about tissue behavior. The dead specimens show post-decompression anatomy. The true living biology of this animal at depth remains unobserved. And the size debate that follows from this makes everything even less certain. The most basic question about the colossal squid has two very different answers, depending on which scientist you ask. How long does it get? Confirmed measurement from the best preserved intact specimens: roughly 23 feet. This comes from direct measurement of whole animals laid out and measured by researchers. Older estimates, and some current ones, propose the animal reaches 46 feet. This number comes from a different methodology, scaling up from partial specimens, particularly tentacle fragments, using size ratios derived from smaller relatives. Both approaches have problems. The confirmed measurement problem is sample size. Scientists have examined very few fully intact adult specimens. Those specimens may not represent the largest individuals in the population. Wild animal populations typically contain a range of sizes. The largest individuals are also often the most capable of escaping capture. Every specimen science has examined arrived by accident. There is no way to know whether the accident-prone individuals that ended up in fishing gear represent the size range of the population accurately. The scaling estimate problem is that size ratios do not hold perfectly across large changes in body mass. A ratio that works for a squid weighing 20 pounds may not scale accurately to a squid weighing 1,000 pounds. Tissue density, bone structure in vertebrates, and organ sizing all change non-linearly with mass. Applying ratios from smaller animals to estimate sizes at this scale introduces errors that compound significantly. Add the decompression issue from the previous chapter. Specimens arriving at the surface have already experienced tissue changes. The mantle may contract slightly as internal pressure changes. Total length measurements of surface specimens may be shorter than the living animal's length at depth. Tentacle length adds another complication. Tentacles are elastic and can stretch considerably when pulled. Historical estimates that involved measuring stretched tentacles may have recorded extended length rather than natural resting length. The difference could be significant at this scale. The honest scientific position is that the confirmed maximum is 23 feet and the theoretical maximum remains unknown. What makes this debate consequential is what a 46-foot colossal squid would mean for our understanding of soft body size limits. The physics of maintaining structural integrity in a soft body organism scale unfavorably with size. A 46-foot colossal squid would require structural and buoyancy solutions well beyond what the 23-foot specimens demonstrate. If the animal reaches 46 feet, it is achieving something that biology cannot currently fully explain at that scale. If it stops at 23 feet, it is still the heaviest invertebrate on Earth and still represents the extreme edge of what soft tissue can structurally sustain. Both versions are remarkable. One is just considerably harder to explain. The population that contains these individuals of unknown maximum size is itself a mystery, with no good answer currently available. The colossal squid may be thriving, it may be under pressure, it may be in decline. Science has no reliable estimate of how many exist. For context, researchers have population estimates for most large marine animals. Blue whale numbers are monitored, great white shark populations are tracked through tagging programs and statistical modeling. Even relatively rare deep-sea fish have population estimates based on survey data. The colossal squid has none of this. The primary method for estimating marine animal populations is direct observation. Survey vessels move through an area, count individuals spotted or caught, and use statistical methods to project a total number for the broader range. This requires either seeing the animals at the surface, catching them in standardized gear, or tagging them and using the tag return rate to estimate population density. The colossal squid defies all three approaches. It lives too deep for surface surveys. It comes up in fishing gear only by accident, and the fishing effort in the Southern Ocean is not standardized enough to use catch rates as a population index. Tagging requires capturing a live animal, attaching a tag that survives deep pressure, releasing the animal successfully, and then recovering the tag data. 0 successful tagging events have been completed. The indirect evidence suggests a population large enough to sustain regular sperm whale predation across the entire Southern Ocean. Sperm whales are wide-ranging animals that consume large numbers of squid. The colossal squidbeak evidence in whale stomachs shows consistent predation rather than rare events. That consistency argues for a prey population substantial enough to make regular hunting worthwhile for the whale. But substantial is not a number. Scientists cannot translate the whales find them regularly into an individual count without data on whale movement, hunting range, success rate per dive, and squid density per unit of ocean volume. None of these numbers exist with enough precision to produce a reliable population estimate. Climate change adds urgency to this gap. The Southern Ocean is warming. Changes in water temperature affect the distribution and density of the prey species the colossal squid hunts. Changes in oxygen concentration at depth affect the animal's breathing efficiency. If the population is under pressure from environmental change, science currently has no baseline to measure the decline against. The animal could be flourishing. It could be collapsing. The data does not exist to distinguish between these possibilities. This is one of the most significant information gaps in modern marine biology, and the reproduction question underneath it makes the gap even harder to close. Nobody has ever seen a colossal squid mate. Nobody has ever seen a colossal squid lay eggs. Nobody has ever found a confirmed colossal squid egg mass. These statements describe a species that has been formally known to science for 100 years. Reproduction is the most fundamental biological process. Understanding how a species reproduces is essential for understanding its population dynamics, its life cycle, and its vulnerability to environmental pressure. For the colossal squid, science has essentially none of this. Dissection of female specimens has confirmed the presence of large ovaries containing many eggs. The eggs are small relative to the female's body size, suggesting the species produces many eggs rather than few large ones. This reproductive strategy, called high fecundity, is common in animals where juvenile survival rates are low. Many offspring are produced because only a small fraction survive to adulthood. This pattern fits the colossal squid situation. Juveniles occupy shallower water where more predators exist. Transparent juveniles are camouflaged but still vulnerable. A high egg output compensates for high juvenile mortality. Male specimens have been examined. Male reproductive organs are present and functional in the individuals examined. The mechanics of sperm transfer in cephalopods typically involves a specialized arm that delivers packets of sperm to the female. Whether the colossal squid uses this system or a different one is unknown, because no mating has been observed. The eggs themselves have never been found in the wild. Researchers have searched for egg masses in areas where juvenile squid have been detected. Nothing has been located. The egg mass could be attached to a structure on the seafloor at depth. It could be a floating open ocean cluster. It could be carried by the female for a period before release. All of these are possible. None are confirmed. Sperm whale stomach contents provide a clue about timing. The mix of juvenile and adult squid remains in whale stomachs suggests the species does not have a single synchronized breeding season, but rather reproduces across a broader time window. This is consistent with animals living in relatively stable deep water environments, where seasonal signals are weak. What happens between the eggs leaving the female and the juveniles appearing in the mesopelagic zone is completely unknown. The larval stage, if there is one distinct from the transparent juvenile phase, has never been described. The gap between confirmed reproduction biology and observed life cycle events is so wide that even the most basic life history of this animal remains uncertain. And the middle section of that life history is the most mysterious part of all. Draw a line. At one end, place a colossal squid egg, theoretical, unconfirmed location. At the other end, place a fully grown adult female weighing 1,100 pounds at 2,000 feet or more below the surface. Now fill in the middle. Science cannot. The juvenile phase is partially documented. The 2025 video placed a juvenile at roughly 2,000 feet deep in the Southern Ocean. Other juvenile specimens have been found in the stomachs of various predators at moderate depths, suggesting juveniles occupy the mesopelagic zone, the layer between roughly 600 and 3,000 feet. The transparent body plan is confirmed for this stage. The small size and passive movement are confirmed. The adult phase is partially documented through the specimens examined. Large body mass, deep habitat, confirmed active hunting based on stomach contents, reddish-pink coloration, full anatomy as described across the previous chapters. Everything in between is a blank. At what size does the squid transition from the transparent juvenile body plan to the pigmented adult? Unknown. At what depth does it begin its descent from the mesopelagic zone into the deeper water adults inhabit? Unknown. How long does the juvenile phase last before the transition begins? Unknown. How fast does the animal grow during the intermediate stage? Unknown. Growth rate for the colossal squid is one of the most contested unknowns in its biology. Cephalopods generally grow fast relative to vertebrates of comparable size. A large squid species might reach full size in 1 to 2 years under ideal conditions. Some researchers apply this general pattern to the colossal squid and propose that the animal reaches its 1,000-pound adult size in a similarly compressed time frame. Others argue that the deep-water, cold-temperature environment slows metabolism enough to extend the growth period significantly. If the fast growth theory is correct, the colossal squid has a short lifespan. It is born, grows rapidly, reproduces once or a few times, and dies, all within a few years. The high egg output fits this model, producing many offspring quickly before the adult dies. If the slow growth theory is correct, the individual squid that researchers have examined may represent years or decades of growth. The life history is longer, slower, and more vulnerable to disruption. Both theories exist in the published literature. Neither is confirmed. The middle of this animal's life is a closed door. 100 years of research has not opened it. And what that gap reveals about the deep ocean itself is bigger than just one species. The colossal squid is one animal, Its unknowns are a map of how little science understands the deep ocean. The deep ocean covers more than half of the Earth's surface. It holds more water volume than any other environment on the planet. It connects to every ocean basin, and it is, in terms of direct scientific observation, the least explored large environment on Earth. The colossal squid's existence, at the scale it occupies, as the heaviest invertebrate alive, as a regular prey item for sperm whales across the Southern Ocean, as an active hunter of large fish, implies an ecosystem complex enough to support it. That ecosystem has its own food chains, predator-prey relationships, population dynamics, and responses to environmental pressure. The colossal squid sits somewhere near the top of its specific deep-water food chain. Apex predators and near-apex predators require significant prey populations below them to sustain their numbers. If the colossal squid population is substantial, as the whale predation evidence implies, then the fish populations the squid hunts must be substantial enough to feed them, and the prey below those fish must be substantial enough to feed them. The deep Southern Ocean is running an ecosystem large enough to support all of these trophic levels simultaneously, mostly invisible to science. Warming ocean temperatures are changing this ecosystem at a rate that current deep-sea monitoring cannot track precisely. The Southern Ocean is warming faster than the global ocean average. Temperature changes at depth affect oxygen solubility, current patterns, and the distribution of cold water species that form the base of the food chain. The Patagonian toothfish, which the colossal squid likely hunts regularly, is already monitored commercially because it is a high-value fishing target. Its population data is better than the squid's. If toothfish populations shift under climate pressure, the squid's food supply shifts with them. Whether the squid can adapt by shifting its own range or prey preference is unknown. The colossal squid's role in transferring energy between deep-water prey and sperm whale predators also has larger ocean significance. When a whale hunts squid at depth and then surfaces to breathe, it brings nutrients from deep water into the surface layer. Whale waste at the surface fertilizes surface plankton. This process, driven partly by deep-sea hunting, connects the deep ocean ecosystem to the surface one. Remove the colossal squid from this chain reduces population significantly, and the energy transfer changes. The whale hunts more elsewhere, the surface fertilization pattern shifts, the effects ripple outward. A species science cannot count, cannot track, and cannot observe breeding is playing a structural role in ocean chemistry that science is only beginning to quantify. The squid forces the question: how many other animals down there are doing the same thing without our knowledge? The colossal squid did not appear in 1925. That is simply when the first human wrote it into a scientific record. The animal was living in the Southern Ocean long before that, long before the whaling crews who brought those first tentacles to London, long before any human reached Antarctic waters at all. Cephalopods as a group are ancient. The ancestors of modern squid appear in the fossil record hundreds of millions of years ago. The specific lineage that produced the colossal squid's body plan, the internal gladius, the rotating hooks, the enormous eye, refined across enormous stretches of geological time. The colossal squid's eye is not an accident. It is the result of a predator-prey relationship with sperm whales that has been running long enough to drive the eye to its current extraordinary size. That process requires millions of years of selection pressure. The squid and the whale have been evolving in response to each other across timescales that make all of human civilization look like a single afternoon. And for all of that time, the colossal squid lived, hunted, reproduced, and died in the Southern Ocean without any human awareness of its existence. Billions of individuals, across millions of years, completely outside the record of any science or culture. The 1925 tentacles were the first crack in that invisibility. 100 years later, the crack is slightly wider. A few specimens. One video of a juvenile, a partially mapped anatomy, a set of confirmed facts surrounding a much larger set of unknowns. The thing science still does not know about this animal are more numerous than the things it does. Reproduction is unknown. Maximum size is unknown. Population is unknown. Adult hunting behavior is unknown. Life cycle is mostly unknown. The colossal squid is confirmed real, confirmed enormous, confirmed strange, and confirmed mostly hidden. That last fact is the one worth sitting with. This animal, the largest invertebrate alive, was unknown to science for all of recorded human history until a pair of tentacles turned up in a dead whale a century ago. The entire scientific record on this species fits in a small room, and the ocean where it lives is mostly unexplored. If something this large stayed hidden this long, the question changes shape. The deep Southern Ocean covers millions of square miles. It reaches depths that no research vehicle has fully surveyed. The colossal squid's habitat alone is larger than many continents. And within that habitat, in the permanent darkness at depth, other animals are living, hunting, and reproducing on timescales that dwarf human history. Some of them may be as large as the colossal squid. Some may be larger. Some may have anatomical features that would require biology to rewrite its rules again, the way the colossal squid already has, repeatedly, every time a new specimen arrives. We know the edge of the map. We do not know what is drawn beyond it. The colossal squid tells us something simple about where science actually stands with the deep ocean. We are still at the beginning.